Present.
Trustee Farrell?
Present.
And Trustee Roberts?
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll take a reflective moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Hope the kids had my switches. Okay, the agenda is approved 6-0. Thank you. Okay, turn it over to staff.
Okay, we're here to propose the approval of 3 easement agreements with Planet Bluegrass properties. This is in order for us to complete the construction of our water line project that's being funded through FEMA and CDBG. So we're moving the water line away from the river to the road for resiliency. And this is a $2.6 million project. And we need a temporary staging agreement to stage material, a temporary construction easement to connect the new water line onto Planet Bluegrass, and then we need a new permanent utility easement for continued maintenance and long-term access to our utilities on that property. Oh, so I read out all the resolutions?
No, just
Okay.
describe the first resolution.
Okay, so Resolution 2019-89. This is a temporary construction staging easement agreement. So this is to allow us to stage materials close to the project right off of Apple Valley Road in the area known as Planet Bluegrass Farms. And the property owner is requesting $5,000 for use of his property for that easement agreement. And then, I don't know what... Okay.
So just a question about the dates in the agreement. In Section 1, the date is December 31st, 2019, and the second section, it's November 30th. The other document had both dates November 30th.
November 30th is what it should be.
The December 31st could be changed?
Yes.
To match that?
Okay.
And then just a question about I don't recall ever paying for a temporary construction easement in the past. Do we have any explanation as to why he's asking $5,000 to have a temporary access?
Currently, Longmont is using the same area, and they are paying him for the use of his property, too, for staging their material as well.
For the exact same area?
Yes.
What does the money generally go toward, I guess, in this situation?
It's similar to leasing the land, as we had to do for the Public Works building. In that case, we leased it from Blue Mountain Stone. While we were staging materials next door, we paid Mr. McCain to lease that property as well. So it's a similar arrangement as we have done in other situations for staging of materials, or in the case of the Public Works building. In this case, I do not know how Longmont came up with the amount they were going to pay him. If they had a formula, but I think that somewhat set the bar for us. In this case, Longmont is paying Mr. Ferguson $3,000 to use the same area. And we had originally proposed that, and he said he wanted $5,000 from the town of Lyons because he didn't have sufficient notice.
How much did we pay, I guess, comparably for other areas we've leased? How much have we paid in the past?
I don't know if the acreage is on here. Do you know?
Not off the top of my head.
yeah,
I'd say
I-
probably a half acre.
half acre?
Yeah.
On the other properties, we were leasing those for $400 or $500 a month, but for an extended length of time.
Other questions by other board members? Trustee Farrell? Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
That's okay.
You had one. Okay.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. Was there any justification for the $2,000 price tag for the town of Lyons versus Longmont?
Only that he felt there wasn't sufficient, that it should have been secured prior to the start of the project.
And what date would that expectation be, according to Mr. Ferguson?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, we did get the easement agreements to him prior to construction, but it was right during a busy time for him and vacation, and so the time he came back, you know, he just didn't feel like he had enough time to review the easement agreements. So I think, I mean, I believe with the staging, he did know about the staging ahead of time. The other two that we'll get to, he didn't have as much notice, but the staging he did know, but it's more the basis of not knowing the other piece of the project being tied in onto his property.
So it was, you know, I want to be really upfront here. We originally thought we were going to be able to use this area at no cost. We had an email from Mr. Ferguson saying there would not be a cost for the staging, and he said, you know, he changed his mind, and he has a right to do that if we need the area. So what he is now asking for is $5,000 for that staging area.
Trustee Browning?
So is this the only property that can be used as the staging area?
Yes, there was a difficulty trying to find staging areas because the rest of the area is in Boulder County, and they just don't allow anything in the floodway, or they're in the floodway. Longmont could not secure anything in the county, so that's why we're sharing it with them, because they were having difficult time finding a close location. I mean, the other option is to store somewhere else and haul it in, but that just adds time and cost to your project.
So, I mean, there's other landowners out in that area with big lots, but the county won't let them.
Not in the county.
Yeah,
No staging in a floodplain.
yeah.
Not only floodway, but floodplain.
Yeah,
So,
that's correct.
I mean, the county does its own flood recovery projects in floodplains. They have to. What do they do when they got a stage for their own construction?
I don't know, but I know that Longmont was tried, and they had difficult time finding it.
And then they negotiated this with Mr. Ferguson. But to truck it into another area of town will have its own set, that will definitely delay the project and create more
Understand.
costs, create more pollution, create more everything. So even though I don't like paying more than Longmont has to in this situation now, in the time frame we're in, the staff are recommending to enter into the staging agreement with him for this amount to be able to continue the project.
So, we're using the same contractor as Longmont, right?
Right.
So are they separately staging materials for the Longmont construction and the Lyons construction?
Yes,
They can't be commingled on the site.
right. Plus, they have different materials, some of the materials different, but anything that's similar, they will keep that all separate.
Is it already being used, or have we been trucking them in already until now?
It's been being used because we thought we had permission to use it, so we were trying to formalize the agreement.
I've got some other questions, but I think I will save them for the
Easements.
easements, because I want to go through the process when Mr. Ferguson came to the town on an expedited basis to get a permit for his bridge, and how that whole thing worked, and how we treated him versus how he's treating us. But maybe that's more relevant to the other easements.
So, and if you want to, we can if Attorney Dittman is okay with this, we could potentially have the discussion and then do the vote on all three.
I think we ought to take them one I
Or
prefer to take them one at a time.
You want to take them in the order they're presented?
There needs to be a separate vote on each.
Sure, we could have a
We could
separate vote at
discuss
the
them at
end.
the same time, but then take separate votes.
I think the discussion could
Okay.
fine. We can have that discussion now. We don't have to keep it so isolated as to not mention the other units.
Because there is a,
There's some relativity. Just a question about, we do own property across the street. The town of Lyons has land behind Eagle Canyon. Did we explore using that land instead?
you still have to track it.
Yeah, it's still trucking it in across the highway. It's still not as convenient. But I don't recall the engineers at the time may have explored it, but I don't remember that discussion. I may not have been involved in that.
I mean, are they having to truck it at least some short distance? I got to imagine they put it somewhere to take it where they're going to use it,
They
correct?
bring
Or
it in
no?
and stage it there. And they're
So they're
also
just-
sorting material.
Okay.
As you excavate, and you got to sort material and haul that out. They're doing it all right there. So that's another thing. You'd have to take it somewhere else, sort it somewhere else, and then haul it somewhere else. That's
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's enough access in that spot,
Yeah.
but if it was just literally storing it, I thought, you might be able to work something out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Others before we go, Trustee Roberts?
And we own a property at the other end of Apple Valley Road, too.
which is probably in the county. So we still,
Then we have to get county permits.
we still have to get.
It's not in the floodplain, but it's still county
It's in the
permitted.
county.
Yeah.
I want to add here, again, my name's Joel Price, contract town engineer. Before we go into the vote tonight, and want to talk about the critical nature of this, we're pretty much done with this project. This is our last little leg here. We understand the frustrations you would have with feeling a little bit jerk around here. We've also talked to Mr. Ferguson about those. We know that Tracy has been approached and said, hey, you can use this property for free. Sorry about that.
It's good. It's just getting recorded.
Yeah, and then we came back, and he's like, now I want $5,000. So we went back to him, said, how about $3,000? You're playing long lot, $3,000. That seems fair. He complained about being frustrated with the timing of this and feeling like he's not being respected for being aware of the project. Whether that's true or not, that's how he felt at the time. And then moving forward, the boring of this pipeline, which is the ultimate piece to connect to his property line, that is where he has most of the leverage right now. And he came back with an additional $10K on top of that. So in all, he's just frustrated, and we're going back and forth with him. We've had multiple discussions with him, tried to talk him down. We've come back and forth with some reasoning on dates. He wanted us to be out of there October 30th. We said, how about November 30th? We know we can be out of there. So we're kind of coming to a head on this, and it's put us all in a tight spot to try to get this resolved, and we know that that's why we have the special meeting tonight, and the boring equipment is coming next week. And so there's all these things that are coming to head here that could be more expensive than what this easement agreement would be. It doesn't make things easier for you guys to make that decision, but I just want you guys to be fully informed of what we're doing here and what we're talking about if we say this is not going to sell for us, and we need to look at another alternative and what that could do for us on our project. So just want everybody to know what's on the table here.
We appreciate that, and I think certainly we do have to consider the kind of long-term impacts of not moving forward. I guess my question, though, is if we did not want to approve these tonight, I would guess the next step would be to send a letter to everyone in Apple Valley telling them the project is currently halted because of a lack of ability to secure the easements necessary to complete the project.
Yeah, but the bigger concern is that we would have to go back to our funding sources and say that we cannot complete this project. And if we can't complete it by the funding deadline, then we would have to pay back all the money that we've spent. And we'd have a partially completed project. If we were to delay it, I'm not sure the implications right now. We have till the end of the year to,
What is the funding deadline?
December 31st.
I mean, I guess what I'm suggesting is some peer pressure might be useful because, this has happened before, and when it came to contributing to a community project to restore the river, things came to a different conclusion when there was,
Yeah.
you know.
I think timing-wise, though, I don't know that we have the time to do that now, because, as Joel mentioned, we've got the boring equipment coming in next week. We pushed them once already, we could push it again, but they don't know when they can get that equipment leased again, because other contractors need that equipment, they have to lease it. We also have to pave by a certain date because of weather, so we have a smaller window for getting the entire road paved. There's a lot of things that interconnect, and we could be, the contractor could charge us with the cost of delay as well.
Trustee Caravas?
The moving of this water line is being required by whom again?
The town requested it from FEMA, and CDBG also stepped up and gave us additional funding to make the line more
And
resilient.
Boulder County was also wanting this moved out of the for more resiliency?
And Longmont.
Longmont's moving their raw water line
Yeah,
as well.
okay.
Yeah. But it was something we advocated with our funding sources, because the line did break during the
Yeah.
flood.
Yeah, yeah. As Trustee Rouse indicated, first thing that was on my mind was we have property in the area. And we knew we need staging areas, you always do in construction. I'm a little disappointed that we waited, even though we knew the project was going further, that we didn't, come up with something much sooner than this.
Well,
I know there's a lot of things on everybody's plate, but it's
Well,
just...
no, we have a written email from him stating we could
Yeah,
use it for free.
I understand that.
Yes.
And that was actually last year.
Yeah.
So the staging area, he was quite aware of.
Okay.
It's the other, and the scope of the project did change a couple of times because of funding. And so it came in late that we got additional funding to do the entire line. We were just going to do a portion, but once we were going to do the entire line, that changed the scope, and we were going to tie into his property, and that did change the timing. So we did have the easements ready for review in March and April by town staff and attorney, and I believe we got the easement agreements to Craig, Mr. Ferguson, by the end of May, beginning of June.
And just kind of in defense of staff, they've been,
No, I know.
we've talked about
Yeah.
these on the agenda meetings for many months
Keep
before
getting pushed back.
they kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed because,
We've been
availability
negotiating for
of
2
both
months.
parties, and so it has been in the works for
But
quite some
he's
time.
been aware of it since May, at least, kind of, everything's been signed up, so that's more than enough time to
For the
plan.
staging, it's been,
Plenty of
I
time.
believe since last year, January 1st.
So no disrespect to Mr. Ferguson, but I find that a very, very lousy excuse and a weak excuse, coming from someone of his stature, or self-proclaimed stature, that just doesn't fly. And this is the same individual probably coming to us for contracts in the future for festivals and renting of town land, I'm assuming?
yes.
And staff's back in mind what your starting points for negotiations are at this time?
We have started to meet regarding next year's leases.
And starting price for that is, gosh, got some hints for you. And how many times has this individual done project on his property without permits that have been issued after the fact?
A few.
Like 3 exact few, 5, 10, 12, including county and state, CDOT?
I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. Brandon, would there be something we could do in our ordinance that we extremely, maybe on an emergency basis, strengthen that, whether, I don't know if you can do it towards certain individuals, but properties, that fees start at $25,000, $50,000? When this continues to occur, goes that out of bounds?
It sounds like, Trustee Caravas, are you asking about future leases of town property?
People using, doing projects without permits that have a habit of doing so. So when they come to get a permit after the fact, that it's to even ask for something to be reviewed after the fact something's been done, that there's a upfront fee.
It would have to be a separate ordinance.
Is that something we can do on an emergency basis? Get it through quickly?
It'd be difficult to do on an emergency basis because, when you typically do an emergency ordinance, it'd be some sort of threat to health, safety, welfare. And I think, you can make an argument that he is going to harass the people who to work without permits, but it's not the classical example of emergency ordinance, put it that way.
Okay, thank you.
So, Trustee Farrell, go ahead.
Well, I just want to bring up the annexation agreement, and, I mean, the very last whereas basically says, unless you want me to read the entire thing, but that there would be no compensation, and it specifically lists for utilities facilities and public improvements. So how is it that they can ask for compensation when in the annexation specifically, it says it's not allowed? Plus, I want to, so you can answer that question in a minute, but I also want to bring up that back in May, at the May 20th meeting, when for the second time, for the second year in a row, they came asking for the amendment to the keynotes, because they missed all the deadlines, and then they did it again, and I sat in that seat, and I said, well, why don't we just make this permanent? Let's fix it, so that you don't have to come back every single year. The answer was no, 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 because we're going to have to ask for other things later, so we'll come back and work on it together. So, I'm really having a hard time with the argument that this is a last-minute deal for him. And he's asking 5 times the amount of money that he wants from Longmont.
No.
Well, if you include total.
Oh, total.
Total,
But that's
5 times.
for different, the easements are different.
I understand that, but his number went up for no reason. And that just seems unreasonable
0 to
to me
5.
completely.
Yep.
That's all I have to say about that. But actually, Brandon, can you answer the question on the annexation agreement? On the whereas?
So, a couple things on that one. The whereas clause is, it's a prefatory language. If you look at the actual body of the agreement, I mean, whereas clauses show the intent, they're not necessarily binding. So literally the body of the agreement, see what it says in the body of the annexation agreement. But regardless, the town is still going to need an easement, and it still needs some sort of real property interest that allows, these activities to happen. And the annexation agreement cannot provide for those types of real property interest. In particular, the permanent utility easement, which anything that's permanent in nature needs to be consideration and needs to be recorded. And that's part of what we're up against. I mean, the other option here would have been to condemn his property, but we're kind of past that point at this stage.
So let me just try to help the board here a little bit, because I think that ultimately, while none of us are like being put in this situation, no one likes to have negotiations going with a gun to your head. The last thing that's really good for anybody is to have the local version of Trump's trade war with China, where the citizens end up losing. We need a new water line in this area. It's $15,000 we didn't expect and really should not have to pay, in my opinion. Mr. Ferguson has made his choice. These are our terms. We have to make a decision to either keep moving forward and finish this project or lose potentially $2.2 million and have an unfinished project. Certainly he would have some explaining to do for the consequences of that. But really, does that really harm Mr. Ferguson, or does it really harm the citizens of Lyons and Boulder County? So while sometimes they don't all feel good, let me just say that, but escalating this to with our own version of exorbitant fees is also not the answer, in my opinion. So I would entertain a motion on this resolution and see if we can move forward.
We're talking about just the first one, right?
First resolution.
Okay.
Trustee Browning.
Like I said, I have a number of additional questions relating to the easements, and the discussion's kind of gone back and forth. I was going to save those till we got to the easements rather than the staging area. But and some of those the reason I'm saving those is there's no reference to construction staging areas, and some of these prior documents in there are to easements for utilities. So I was going to ask them in the context of those, unless we're going to discuss them all at once. But if we're going to vote first on the staging agreement, I think he's got us between a rock and a hard place on that, but I'm not sure that he does on the others, and I've got a number of questions about the easements.
Well, I think we've had good discussion on at least this one, so why don't we try to move this one and
All right.
go from there?
Couldn't tell, was that? I couldn't tell if trustee Barney was making a motion.
I haven't heard a motion so far. Trustee Farrell?
Sorry, I have a lot of papers. I move to approve Resolution 2019-89 for a temporary construction staging easement with Planet Bluegrass and the Apple Valley water line.
Is there a second? With a change of December 31st to 2019?
With a change for December 31st, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Can we turn trustee Miller's? Oh, so, okay, it does pass 6-0. Thank you. All right, next resolution.
Resolution 2019-90. This is for temporary construction access easement. So this would allow us access onto Planet Bluegrass property to do the construction needed, which would be boring under the highway and tying into our existing water line on that property.
So this one is presented for $10, and this is temporary, just to be able to get in and off the property with
Yes.
persons. Is that kind of the sum?
Mm-hmm.
The dates on this one are both November 30th,
Which is what,
and we're confident we will be done and not needing any extensions from these dates.
yeah, if we can start next
Any
week.
questions from the board on this one? Trustee Browning?
Yes, going back to the annexation agreement, it does cover easements, although it didn't cover construction staging areas, and not just in the whereas. Paragraph 7 regarding dedications specifically deals with permanent easements for public water. It says, as generally shown in Exhibit D. If you look at Exhibit D, it's not readable in the electronic form that I had this agreement, and you literally can't read the print. So I guess question number one is, why is this not covered by paragraph 7 of the annexation agreement?
You might be able to,
I don't have the annexation agreement in front of me. I would like to reference what you're speaking to, and I can maybe answer that. Looking at a couple of exhibits here, the easements that I'm aware of related to the annexation agreement are on the west side of 36, and we're trying to get on the east side of 36. So there's a right-of-way dedication that was awarded to the town last year, or 2017, for 30 feet, and then there's a trail, 10-foot trail easement, and all that is west of 36, and we're trying to access the property on the east side of 36.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be some confusion there on which side of the road we're on.
Yeah, I mean,
it does actually, I did look at that prior to the meeting, and there is the water line. There's two electrical easements on the west side, or I'm sorry, the east side, and the water line easement. But that easement area does not cover the area where we need to get in to do construction. We need to put a bore pit there, and so the boundaries of that easement would not cover the construction area. So that's why we need a construction easement agreement, because it's not encompassed in what's in the existing.
I guess this is for the town attorney. The language in that paragraph 7 says, as generally shown in Exhibit D, so that conveys to me that it didn't have to be in the exact same place. And if you had easements on the east and the west side, isn't it generally shown to be easements? It says public streets, water, sanitary, sewer, pedestrian, bike trail access. And it's permanent easements. It's not temporary easements. It's permanent easements.
And I think there are specific boundaries to that easement, correct?
Yeah.
The trustee Browning, I mean, you could make an argument that it may include other easements than those that already exist through, generally, but I think, the specific governs the general, and, provided an easement that shows the exact easements that will be provided. We may have an argument there, but the problem is, the dispute that will entail to get this figured out under the annexation agreement will be much longer than what we need to start and finish this project.
And of the requests here today, this is the most minor, so I think we probably have some things we'll want to talk about with the next one.
I've got other questions. There's a reference in paragraph 18 of the annexation agreement to a certain easement agreement recorded January 27th, 2017, about the town's public wastewater line or main or whatever line and so forth. I haven't seen a copy of that January 27, 2017 easement agreement. What does it provide? We have an existing 2017 easement agreement. What does it say?
I don't have that in front of us, so I don't know if you could share what you're referencing.
It's in the annexation agreement. It's in paragraph 18 entitled Municipal Services.
I don't have the annexation agreement either.
Okay.
So,
Before I do a new easement agreement, I'd sure like to know what's in the old, and pay $10,000 for it. I'd sure like to know what's in the old easement agreement.
That's a different property than where we're at. So that's why as staff, we're wondering why we're referring to the annexation agreement.
Yeah, I think your discussion might be better for the next resolution if we just want to deal with the temporary construction for now.
Without knowing even what it pertains to, I don't know if that's the case or not. I have no idea. All I know is there's a 2017 easement agreement that's in place, and I haven't seen it. And you were asking for a new easement
yeah,
agreement.
I have a couple of easement agreements in front of me, but I don't have the annexation agreement that refers to paragraph 18. It stops at 17. And then I have another trail easement agreement that stops at
It's not the trail easement.
11. And there is
These are the recorded versions.
yeah, these are recorded, that's all west side of the road. And I also have a right-of-way specialty warranty deed that's part of that annexation that was recorded December 2017. So,
I
not
did
the-
send
it's not the same name.
the annexation agreement to Deb. It's 48 pages long, though.
okay, that's what we need then to refer to.
You must, okay,
The one you was emailing, the email to
okay, that question I'm not sure of the answer to, but you mentioned the trail easement. Could somebody give me the background of the trail easement as to why we got it and why we're willing to abandon it now?
Okay, that's a fair question, and definitely one we had to double check on. So the right-of-way that was granted to the town for the annexation agreement is along the Plan of Bluegrass property, Craig Ferguson property, from the west side of 36, underneath the bridge, all the way to his property line. There was a trail easement that was 10 feet wide in addition to that, so a total of 40 feet. That trail easement actually is in the river. So it's not really usable space for a trail, and you can provide a trail within that 30-foot right-of-way with no problem, and still connect underneath the bridge, so you have access from both sides of the highway, such that you need to put a trail there in the future. So we saw that as a simple bargaining chip, if you will, to give him the trail easement, because he was having a lot of heartburn about that, so we felt like that was a good negotiating piece for us. And again, it doesn't make things easier for us, so when we're talking about him going back and reneging on the fee, he said he would accept and then come back and throw 3 to 5 times in our face. But at the same time, that's why we're saying that this easement with the permanent utility easement will be vacated, because it's not even usable space unless we want to relocate the river, which no one does. And those things typically happen when you're doing a planning level document like that to get an annexation map approved, you want to get as much land as you possibly can, so you're not going to put yourself in the corner later. But looking at that 30-foot right-of-way, you have all that you need from basically the right-of-way of Apple Valley to the river to put a trail in. So that was kind of simple logic for us.
Did we request a fee of maybe $10,000 for abandoning our trail easement?
Well, we didn't get this whole $10,000 back thrown in our face until last week. So we were going down the road of $5,000, and we came back and said, hey, listen, you're paying Longmont $3,000, how about $3,000? And it was really one of those things where the festival season was in play. He was gone for the weekend, so we never got to approach that with him in person. Maybe that would have went a little better, and we could have talked about things. So there's some emotional things that are going on here, and a little bit of frustration on his end, and that's why he came back with that. So that's here we are today. All this stuff is blowing up on our face as it is.
He asked for the $5,000 last Thursday or the $10,000?
It changed to 10,000.
Changed to 10,000 less. Yeah.
So before last week, it was $5,000 for the easement and free for the staging area, according to his prior email. And then last week, it changed to $5,000 for the staging area and $10,000 for the easement.
Correct.
I see.
Correct.
I don't know that this is directly related, but to me, we're all talking about access to the property and stuff. Could you give a brief explanation of what happened with the footbridge construction and permitting, and whether the town granted Mr. Ferguson a big favor there without big payment, or because that's, to me, at this point, part of the relations between the town and Planet Bluegrass?
Mr. Ferguson has a new business manager that is working on all the details to the different festivals for him now this year than he has in previous years. That person came to me and said, we're going to put up this temporary bridge over the river, and informed me they were going to do that. And I explained that that needed a floodplain development permit. And Mr. Ferguson was insistent that it did not take a floodplain development permit because it was a temporary structure. And he did not agree with me as the floodplain administrator that that was required. So he did not feel he needed one, so he did not submit anything. Then after several discussions back and forth and showing him the actual Federal Register where a temporary structure such as the bridge he wanted, it does require a floodplain permit. He conceded to finally filling it out the day before he wanted it.
And we granted it.
We did lots of footwork at the staff level to make sure that the abutments were appropriate and the weights, and we granted it on a very temporary basis to be put in the day before the festival and removed the day after.
And did he pay anything to the town for a permit fee, or?
There is a floodplain development permit fee, and that would go through our front desk. I'm assuming they collected that, but I can definitely follow up on that. Then it became it did get a floodplain development permit for a very temporary structure. He had gone to both police and fire prior to submitting the floodplain permit and informed me they would both felt it was better for health and safety and public safety to have it there versus having people walk down the highway shoulder. And I did inform him that it was not up to those two people to put a bridge in the river, that it still took the floodplain administrator, and we finally got there, but it was the day before he needed it. And I think we were very cooperative in getting that passed at the last minute.
Did he pay anything to reimburse the town for its staff costs and time spent on an expedited basis to process his?
Not that I know of, not above a regular floodplain permit.
And we're not sure if he paid the fee. Any idea what the regular fee amount is for floodplain development
Do you know
permit?
that, Dave?
I don't know off the top of my head.
It's $100, I think.
He wouldn't have been issued if he hadn't paid it.
Okay. Also, is Planet Bluegrass current on its required reports on its receipts and taxes and so forth from the two festivals? Because those are required within 1 week after the end of the festivals.
I can't answer that yet.
Okay, you haven't
I
seen
know
them?
definitely not on Folksfest. I have not seen anything personally on Rocky Crest,
Okay.
but it may have been the finance director.
Did we have to get other easements to relocate the water line along Apple Valley Road, or does it only go on Craig Ferguson's, on Plant Bluegrass's property? I mean, are there other property owners there from whom we've had to get easements?
No.
No, this
So
is the only one.
this is the only one that it's going to cross. Okay. And, I'm trying to kind of generally explore here, because I think it's relevant, what the town gets and gives, and vice versa with Planet Bluegrass. When the Planet Bluegrass annexation happened, and again, it's the annexation agreement that to me raises these questions about whether he agreed to do this without compensation. One of the reasons given for supporting annexation was, more property tax value to the town by bringing this valuable property in that he paid $1.7 million for in 2015. As of today, that property is valued by the Boulder County Assessor's Office at $761,000. And he's made improvements on it too, so it's less than half what he paid for it 4 years ago. Has the town ever had any discussions with the Boulder County Assessor's Office about whether that property is properly valued or not?
I have not had discussions with the assessor.
Not that you know of? I would just note that for the record and suggest that even if the town does not have direct standing to question the value of a private business's property, in my experience, assessors' offices will entertain informational inquiries from taxing jurisdictions as to why values have been set at a particular level. And given what our dealings with Planet Bluegrass with respect to both these easements and the prior the staging agreement we just approved, I think that might be an appropriate area of inquiry. And finally, both the $5,000 and $10,000, would it come from grant money or general revenue funds?
Well, the 5,000 I know I could have gotten covered by the grant. I'm researching now if I can get the 15. It's looking positive that I can get it covered by the grants, but I have to do a little more legwork on that.
So the 5,000 one's probably going to be, we think it can be covered by the grant, but we're not sure about the 10,000.
But I just received an email right before this meeting, and it looks like I should be able to get it covered, but I have to do a little more, like I said, a little more research on that.
I would entertain a motion on the second resolution. This is for a temporary construction easement for $10. Trustee Farrell?
Yes. I move to approve Resolution 2019-90, a resolution of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, to execute temporary construction access easement of Planet Bluegrass for the Apple Valley water line.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I move for somebody else to.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. And the motion carries 5-1. I'd like to suggest that we continue our meeting until after the, what's it, kind of motion to, I can't, my mind just went. Yeah, we're going to need to take a break to have our URA meeting, and we'll have to come back after that and deal with the third resolution. Is there a motion for such a thing? Delay our meeting until after the URA?
I move that we suspend our meeting until after the URA meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Any problem with that from staff's point of view? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All right, it is approved 6-0. Thank you. All right, so we'll take a brief break maybe before the URA meeting and come back. Yeah, you can switch your name tag.
Is it sounds like.
No, it's suspended. This one will be suspended until after this URA meeting. Do you want me to call you back?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pay for that. Yeah, I'll call it back. I got it. How many, you got your easement?
Okay, I'll move this to a different place and when we come back then. That might help. But we got through the first two, both are passed, so we need just the third one.
Okay, yeah, call me back. I may be right for that. So if I am, I may not have the answer, but I'm gonna try to, answer it or something, so.
Yeah, probably be hour, hour and a half.
Okay.
You're right. Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Why don't you turn the air on or open it up?
Survived to get a little by a car? I did. Oh, what are you, buddy? It's still in your house. There's a riot. Oh, yeah. Wait a second. In my driveway. I'm looking for the whole side. You couldn't turn, no, you couldn't turn your job. So I was arrested. And then goes up to the driveway to put up some more flags. Like, oh, it's like this, I said, back in there. I don't know what's going on. I said, why didn't you tell me? I said, everything's cool. I said, no, because I told them to take them down. I said, you see that guy's house? I said, that's what I do. Everything that I'm doing, I'm just about done getting ready for the
Anyway, you need to
I got it. To serve them all. So, thanks for seeing
So hopefully, if that works. Does that help? And then we'll see.
This is also interesting. This is also
We'll call to order the regular meeting of the Lions Urban Renewal Authority, and we apologize for the delay. We have some meeting business prior to this. So we'll get posted for the Okay, we do have a quorum. We've already said the Pledge of Allegiance once tonight, so we're going to skip that for a second time. And I'll turn it over to the town, or URA attorney, Quander, for a report. Thanks.
Good evening, Commissioners. Caitlin Quander, Legal Counsel to the Urban Renewal Authority. I want to start off this evening. The goal is to give you an update on the various discussions with different taxing bodies around the sharing of increment. And so before I dive into it, I just want to kind of acknowledge the awkwardness that the statute creates for both members who come with the background of the town board, but also members who come as appointees from the county or from the fire district. So it's funny in that they are all asked to be appointees to sit here on the board, but when you sit here on the board, you put on your Urban Renewal Authority hat. And that means the town board of trustees have to take off their town hat and act in the interest of the authority, which may or may not align with the town from time to time. And same thing across the board for all the other representatives. And that can be funny, right? Because especially for the other representatives, they're probably also privy to discussions on behalf of the county or on behalf of the school district. And so understanding and navigating that can feel a little funny, right? Because, and I want to be very clear, I've been in a lot of these discussions, that the issue is the issue that we're not here to necessarily defend or represent anything here about the character of
spend a lot of time talking about the impact report in particular that calculates out the increment and talks about potential impacts and services. We also just answered general questions and then have heard initial feedback from those different bodies as they went through. And so I don't know, Commissioner Drysdale, you had the pleasure of joining me for those for the first round and for the second round. I don't know if you have anything else to add on the first round.
No, that was an exact summary.
Okay. So then we came back before this board at our most recent meeting, gave you some feedback. We certainly heard the requests from those bodies for kind of specificity, if you will, from the URA around what the ask or the need is, right? We're talking about sharing increment, and we're asking for 100%, or they're asking for 100%. Where are we starting from to have that negotiation? Because that's the intent of the statute. At our last meeting, I think it was difficult for this board to provide that direction, not having the detail on kind of certainly knowing what the goals are for the Eastern Corridor, but maybe not the numbers around those, and wanting to hear more from the other bodies about their specific impacts to better understand them. So that was the direction going forward. We then had follow-up meetings on August 15th with the Fire District and the Library District, and I had a follow-up call with the county attorney, and so happy to share kind of that outcome there. So on the county side, the county is supportive of sharing its increment, but they have asked that we target that increment towards affordable housing. And so that, that's a shared goal that was discussed early on in our meetings, and I think we heard it in our first sit-down meeting with them and shared that last time. So now the task is on the legal side, for us to craft an understanding of what, and I think we've circulated this. This is just a chart of the different mill levies and percentages of increment that I put together. It's drawn from materials in the impact report. I didn't make anything new from it, but just kind of a better summary, and I think Commissioner Caravas, you'd asked for that last time. Maybe not. Some sort of chart, I thought. So this is intended to guide you so you can understand the different increments and their investments. So again, with the county, what we heard was that they're willing to share. It's just, can we direct those dollars towards affordable housing? And that can be complex, right? We're generating increment off the entire plan area. Affordable housing is a goal for that area, but we don't building in those what-ifs, it can be difficult when it comes to making sure that the increment is financeable in the long term, right? It's hard to go get a bank loan or issue bonds if there's a clawback or an ability to kind of pull those funds back if something doesn't happen. So we will get to work on that and see what we can do on the legal side to try and craft that with the county, and then be back with a further report on that front. I will move on to the library district. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
You had also mentioned that the county had some thoughts about targeting affordable housing, but that then the language has to be very specific in a certain way, so that, I guess my question is that almost any time you're sort of promising something, it has an impact on how the language gets constructed in the IGA, right? Could you talk a little more about that, because I wanted to be really clear in terms of what the issues might be around that.
That's correct, Commissioner. I think particularly on the county front, if we're committing to direct dollars in a certain way, I think the question is, well, what if 15 years from now they don't, right? We've been collecting increments, and everybody wants to build affordable housing, but gosh darn it, it didn't come together for whatever reason. And what are we building in to try and create those parameters while also not creating a mechanism that is no longer financeable, right? Because if there's a chance that 15 years from now the county could claw those funds back, no bank is going to loan against that. You're not going to be able to issue bonds against that. And really that's the whole point of increment, is that you are able to look at this 25 years of what you predict to be collected and finance it up front to do those initial improvements that you need to do to kind of create that catalyst for that development. And so it will be a legal challenge that I will work closely with staff and the county attorney on. He was not suggesting a clawback initially. I think they were very open to, it was very much in the spirit of cooperation of what can we do that works, but also ensures that that spirit is articulated around the affordable housing component. And so we'll spend some time on it.
In that case, it was, I think, kind of built around a mutual priority.
But, yeah.
And so it just brings up the when we do talk about offers and so forth, that we would talk about the potential for mutual objectives, mutual priority.
To piggyback on that a little bit, then if we have that arrangement with the county, affordable housing is one of the highest, it increases the cost for the fire district, because that will be the majority of phone calls and call-outs for them. So having to balance those IGAs to look at everybody's perspective, because what might be the goal of one will actually increase the cost for the other. So
Could I
those are all things we'll be talking about.
ask you to elaborate a little bit on the conversation with the library where you talked about correlating that somehow with their annual budget? How you were talking about factoring that in.
We didn't get too in the weeds, but it was something near the end of our meeting that was identified by the library of, this kind of, when we look at the numbers, this looks to be about this percentage of our annual budget, and if they had a more predictable lever to track it, that they could kind of more appropriately budget long-term. And I think the question for us would be, how do we modulate the increment coming in so that you would pass through more or less each year based on the library's budget? And, their budget can certainly fluctuate. But can you legally do it? Yes. I think, again, it goes to that financeability where, I don't know, if the library budget suddenly really dipped, I
think where I'm going is almost like adding annual budget to this sheet in a way. Because I think what's also relevant is how much does this revenue, what percentage of it is this of the annual budget? So, because I think it becomes a little bit of a factor there. If for the town it's 30% of our total annual budget, it means something different to the town than it does to the fire district if that's 90% of their annual budget. So I think that's just another perspective we may want to consider. And I didn't quite follow what you said about the library's annual budget. But it triggered that thought for me, just that we might want to.
From my notes,
happy to add it.
The other perspective was, could we ask for a flat amount based on a fixed not-to-exceed budget? For example, could they say 3% of our annual budget is what we're willing to contribute in increment, go up to that cap, put a ceiling on it, so that they can more accurately budget and prepare revenues and expenses each year. So, and you were going to take it back, and you're saying that is an option.
It is an option, and I'm certainly happy to, I mean, I think we might need to just look back at what their DOLA filings are, but add what their annual budget numbers are, so that you can take that into account.
Yeah, and these are public entities, so I'd assume this is all public information, right?
Yeah,
So-
we would just need to
okay.
either ask them or locate it. That's
Okay.
right, yeah.
Commissioner Dressen?
Do you have any experience with how county assessors are able to handle the more creative increment agreements?
Well, the law is relatively new, and so I think the more creative agreements are really only implemented in the last couple of years, so we're just starting to see the assessors do it. I think having good conversations early on with the assessor and sitting down and explaining the different IGAs. I've also seen assessors kind of pass the obligation on to the Urban Renewal Authority. So they say, here's the increment, and then the authority then passes those dollars through. So it is handled, each assessor can kind of choose, but instead of the assessor really going there, they say, here it is.
Could we try to? Thank you.
Authority, you go abide by your IGA, right? You go pass those dollars through. And in fact, that's, I need to double check, but I'm pretty sure that that's the school district agreement, is that we collect and then pass through.
So is that something we will have to work into our budget at some point? I mean, does it have to be budgeted, or is that something we can do?
To date, your CFO has done it, but, one of the things, and is in the school district agreement, is an administrative fee. And so of the increment collected, we keep a 1% administrative fee in order to pay that person to do those allocations.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I have one about the county. I understand their emphasis on affordable housing, but they weren't suggesting, or maybe they were, that like 100% of the initial expenditures by the ERA or dollars get directed to housing, or some mix, or what?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, they were not. What they were suggesting, and you can kind of see it in this chart, is that if you look over the 25-year period, the totality of the increment that's predicted for the county is 1.77 million. And so their thought would be that over the 25 years, they'd like to see 1.7 million spent on affordable housing that's in fashion. And I will say that they were very open to at least the discussions around the parameters of, it's not necessarily building the project, right? It's, are we doing remediation that allows that affordable project to be built? Are we connecting a water line that allows that affordable project to be built? Right. So they were at least open to thinking about those parameters around what might allow that project to be built. And the other piece I haven't shared that I do want to flag for you is not all affordable housing, but a lot of affordable housing generates no increment, and in fact can be a detriment to your base because it converts a tax-paying property to a nonprofit or non-tax-paying property. And so thinking about the implications of that within your plan is important as well.
And also, I mean, I'm sure the counties would. And unlike the school district, the fire district, and the library district, the county also gets a sales tax component into its revenues. So like the town, if you have a high concentration of retail, say in the eastern quarter, the county gets some sales tax benefit out of it that the other districts wouldn't get. And so do they recognize that as part of the negotiations, I guess is my question, that if for example, we put everything into affordable housing, I know the economics wouldn't work, that would cut their take as a county from retail sales tax, just like it would the towns. So I was wondering if they have any more flexibility in that regard, because there is a sales tax component to their revenue.
Yeah. Commissioner, I appreciate you raising that. We had not really focused our conversation on sales tax. Happy to raise that as part of the conversation. I think the little that I have heard them mention it was in our first meeting, and my sense was that they have taken the position that their goal isn't to be based on sales tax, right? They want to push the sales tax generating uses into incorporated municipalities. so they also believe that sometimes it's not always, but that it's, moving of sales tax from one area of the county to the other, right? Like it's a retailer that goes from one place to another. So I don't know that they put a lot in that basket, but happy to raise it as part of the conversation.
If there aren't any other questions, I think there would be value in going into executive session to talk about where we want to go next. Clearly, I think these entities are looking for some feedback from us, and so I think we need to have that discussion. So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move to go into the executive session, consideration to adjourn to executive session pursuant to CRS paragraph 246402.4E to determine positions relative to matters that are subject to negotiation, develop strategy for negotiations, and instruct negotiators regarding intergovernmental agreements.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of going into executive session, say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, we will go into executive session. So we appreciate everyone in the audience. If you would please clear the room.